Netflix's Centaur World is a pretty one-of-a-kind show that's filled with great animation, amazing musical numbers, plenty of wackiness, and of course, centaurs, big and small. But of all the characters in Centaur World, who falls on the side of good, and which are more bad or chaotic neutral? I'm Keefe Nossi with Wicked Binge, and this is Centaur World, Good to Evil. For this list, we're actually going to be starting with our bad to evil characters before working our way up to the morally gray and then the good. Starting with our most evil and working our way up. We technically only have one character in this section, and that's the Elktor. Simply put, the Elktor is responsible for all the death and destruction in both the human world and Centaur world. Driven by self-hatred and an infatuation with his lover, the Elktor separated himself into what would end up being the Nowhere King and the General. Although they're perceived as different characters throughout most of the series, the General and Nowhere King are really just two sides of the same centaur. The General is driven by selfishness and self-desire, and is overall just a huge coward. He's cruel to his other half when the Elk suggests that they get put back together, and then would rather continue with the meaningless war instead of taking responsibility for the Nowhere King's creation. The General even tried to kill Ryder in order to protect his own life, knowing that if the Nowhere King was killed, then he would die too. As for Elk, because of his loneliness and the mental distress of being separated, his mind was warped and corrupted. He not only created the deadly Minotaurs, but also became a creature that took pleasure from the pain of others, at least according to the Nowhere King's song. While we can't call Elktor a pure evil character, since we know he had no idea his separation would bring so much death and destruction.
Well, yeah, I guess, but look at him. What? He's gross.
Still, given all that he did and caused, as well as what his separate halves did, we just had to rank him here. Alright, with the series' big bad out of the way, let's move on to those who are more neutral. This is the gray area. Starting this section, we have the Beartor. This guy didn't exactly make the best first impression. With how much he towered over the others, he almost seemed like a monster. Making things worse was how the Beartor had wanted to add Horse to his war diorama collection by covering her in varnish. However, we then learned that the Beartor had allowed the mysterious woman to stay with him, even when she proved to be a terrible roommate.
The spatula goes in the spatula drawer.
We truly get to see the Beartor's softer side in the second season. We see him try to use the Hootenanny invite as a way to cheer Woman up, and once the two of them are back in the human realm, Beartor helps her break into her former castle. At the end of the series, Beartor welcomes Woman back into his cave and even gives her a proper pair of shoes to wear. Though he may have been a bit brash at first, and forcing a horse to be in his collection definitely was not cool, it does seem like he has a bit of a heart. Next, we have the Twin Tree Shamans. Being among the first shamans that we meet after Water Baby, these guys are admittedly fairly easy to hate, even if they don't technically do anything wrong. For their unique ability, these two can use magic to make what someone needs become a reality, though this may not necessarily be what they want. Now, while they can be helpful, the tree shamans can also come off as extremely cold. This was seen through their interactions with a young Wamawink. It's like Horse says, even if they couldn't bring Wamawink's herd, they could have at least comforted her. Again, they aren't evil per se, but even with all the help they provide to characters like Durpleton and a sleep-deprived Wamawink, we feel that they're far from outwardly good, at least when compared to our other good characters. And just above them is the aptly named Mysterious Woman. Once a princess, Woman was someone who admired the centaurs of Centaur World. Although she had no idea it would lead to such a tragedy, she loved both Elktor and the General, and once she learned of their betrayal, the woman became bitter and jaded. While she may have freed the Elk from the General's prison, she still abandoned him in the end, leading to Elk becoming the Nowhere King. Although she tried to rectify this mistake, Woman still hesitated when it came to destroying the Nowhere King. She was also fairly hostile toward the herd in the season 1 finale, though we can't really blame her for that, considering all the danger that the herd put their worlds in by reopening the rift. Additionally, Woman was shown to have a bit of a heart when she chose to keep the rift open so that the herd wouldn't be trapped there. We also have to commend her for being the one to eventually kill Elktor, which couldn't have been an easy task for her. It's this main point that ranks her above Beartor and the Tree Shamans. Up next is the fabulous Tiger Tor, Splendib. Splendib is the rival and on-again, off-again boyfriend of Zulius. When the two are on good terms, Splendib can actually be a pretty supportive guy, helping with things like the Hootenanny and the battle against the Minotaurs. Unfortunately, when he and Zulius, quote, don't know each other, Splendib can be a real jerk. He's fairly cocky as well as extremely vain. He stole Zulius's backup dancers, the Glitter Cats, and during the competition, he very obviously looked down on Horse and her lack of fabulousness. We can't call him an outright villain, but he does enough negative things to be put in the gray tier. From talent star to influencer, next is Crandy. Crandy is the main influencer of the Bergtor flock. She's a huge fan of the herd, although she seems to care more about them as entertainment than actual people. She has them participate in her HerdCon event, and doesn't seem to care too much about Horse and her cause, despite the attachment she and her flock have to their so-called favorite show. It's only due to Zulius convincing Crandy and the flock to be part of their narrative that she decides to help in the final battle. But while this isn't great, we can't call Crandy an awful person either. She seems to care about her fans and even allows Baden to stay with the Bergtors despite his transformation. So at least she has that going for her. We're going to rank Stabby next on our list. Stabby, also known as Philip J. Bonecrunch, was a Minotaur that was adopted by Derpleton. Although Stabby was resistant at first, annoyed by Derpleton treating him like a kid, he was eventually won over by his Daddleton's efforts, going through a transformation similar to Horse's. Through this new relationship, Stabby was able to gain a family and become happier as a result. That's not to say he lost his edge, though, as we see him helping Derpleton fight in the final battle. While his former status as a Nowhere King supporter keeps him from being in the good tier, we can certainly appreciate the change that he was able to make going from enemy to ally. And son.
All hail the Nowhere King!
Keeping with the trend of violent characters, we just had to put Becky Apples in this tier. Though her name is very silly, this horse is completely serious. It's implied that Becky has a fairly high body count despite being just a horse. She's very independent and hardly ever listens to anyone, with the only thing that can convince her being apples. Although she fights for the humans, Becky can't seem to care at all about Ryder, often riding off without her. Still, she earns a few hero points for taking out so many Minotaurs, and even helping with the defeat of the general. Her personality could still use a bit of work though.
Isn't that your horse?
That is no one's horse.
Finishing off the gray area, we have another shaman, the Whaletor. Unlike the Twin Trees, who seem somewhat dismissive, the Whaletor cares almost too much about others. For her special power, Whaletor can absorb centaurs physically and emotionally, taking away their pain and memories after swallowing them. Through this, she also takes on their sorrow. Although this may seem like a kindness to those who are depressed or suffering, in actuality, the Whaletor is offering them an unhealthy coping mechanism that doesn't truly help anyone. Thankfully, through Wamawink, Whaletor is able to realize her mistake and restores everyone that she's absorbed. While, yeah, she may be kind, we just couldn't overlook how many people Whaletor was willing to keep in limbo, even if she didn't realize the harm that she was actually doing. Now, we finally arrived at our most noble and most heroic characters. These characters are the good. First in this tier, we're going to rank everyone's favorite Moltor, Comfortable Doug. Doug is an interesting one. He starts out as a guard for the Moltor jail, and ends up becoming a fairly major character and ally, being someone who encourages others to be comfortable. In Season 2, he acts as a messenger between the two worlds, and he also fights in the final battle with his mini-herd army under his alias Flat Dallas. Although we will acknowledge that Doug does quite a bit of good throughout the show, it's his personality that can leave others wondering how to feel about him. He can sometimes be a bit rude and very blunt, causing him to come off as insensitive. This was especially apparent when he was telling Horse about Ryder and Becky Apples. Even so, we can't take too many points off for that, so Doug manages to stay out of the gray tier. Following him, we have the surly Finchtor, Ched. Out of all the members of the main herd, Ched was probably the hardest to warm up to. Ched is often bad-mouthing Horse in order to get a rise out of her through his insults, and doesn't really let up even after admitting that he does care for her.
Horse, boring and forgettable. It's perfect.
However, this is due to his painful history with the Horsetar Kingdom, and while it isn't a valid excuse, you can understand why Ched acts this way. But as frustrating as Ched can be, he still clearly cares about Horse, as well as the rest of the herd, when push comes to shove. He tries to collect food for them while Wamawink's asleep, and fights right alongside them despite being so small. We even see that after Derpleton was disowned by his family, Ched was the first to comfort him. That alone earns this guy quite a few good points. Next up, we have Zulius. Zulius is all about the sass and drama. He can be a bit self-obsessed as well as a bit judgmental and rude towards others, though he doesn't quite cross that line into being a jerk, fortunately. At the end of the day, Zulius still cares about his herd, even if he cares about himself just a little bit more. He tried to coach Horse when it came to Johnny's Tea Time Be Best competition, and even accepted Horse's decision when she said that she had to win it her own way.
You have to win this thing!
Though he can get wrapped up in perfection, Zulius is also able to use his skills to help out the herd, like when he was able to win over the flock of bird tours. Now, while Zulius does have a few things to work on, we'll concede that he also brings quite a bit of good and fabulousness to the herd. Getting ranked slightly above Zulius is the always kooky Glendale. Let's get Glendale's biggest flaw out of the way. She loves to steal. While this may be partially due to her portal tummy spell, Glendale still enjoys it and doesn't seem like she'll ever want to give it up. She can also be pretty aggressive when she wants to be, as seen when the herd was in the Moltor prison. Still, while Glendale may be mostly seen as comic relief, she's got a good heart. This was best seen when she helped the Arctic centaurs with their anxieties and genuinely wanted to help them find better coping mechanisms, which in turn allowed them to help in the fight against the Nowhere King. This is the main reason why she manages to rank above other herd members, despite all of her theft. But hey, she did steal the Rift Key back in the Season 1 finale, so maybe stealing can do a bit of good sometimes too.
Don't ask me questions about my things.
Jumping back over to the human side, we finally arrived at Ryder. Though we don't see a lot of Ryder in the series, we know that she's at the very least a person who cares a lot. She treats Horse like a person and not just an animal, caring for and comforting Horse when she's upset, and even searching for Horse after she gets transported to Centaur World. Ryder is only dismissive of Horse once, during the last lullaby, and given what Horse was suggesting, we can't completely blame Ryder for not believing her. As for other flaws, we saw that Ryder was willing to disobey orders from the general and go to the Nowhere King's castle herself, but while this could paint her as rebellious, Ryder only did this to try and help her cause. Although Ryder can be a bit careless and reckless, she still manages to come off as a respectable and honorable soldier, as well as a good friend. Being surprisingly high for a minor character, next up is Sunfish Merguy. Though he doesn't quite live up to the idealized version of a merman that Wamawink had, Sunfish is a really great guy. In his debut episode, we learned that he had decided to run an entire amusement park on the bay in the hopes of cheering others up. Although many still chose to be absorbed by the Whale Tour, the effort is extremely commendable. Though we have to dock him a few points for simply pointing depressed people to his amusement park and not actually trying to talk to them. Though we still feel that Sunfish is a really nice guy overall, even if he can sometimes be insensitive. Next on our list is the hippo shaman, Water Baby. Water Baby is the one that sets the herd out on their quest during Season 1. Then in Season 2, she goes to the human world to try and help Ryder in the war. While her motivations may start out as a bit mysterious, we eventually learn that her main goal is to reunite the worlds and end the war once and for all. Water Baby is a determined and brave person who cares deeply about her people, protecting them against the Nowhere King whenever they need her to. She's the friendliest of all the shamans despite being a bit of a trickster mentor, and though she sometimes pushes Wamawink as her protege, the two of them are still able to have fun with each other. Honestly, the only thing preventing her from being ranked any higher is the fact that our top 3 really are that good.
I'll keep an eye on your friend.
For our Bronze Medal of Good, we're giving it to Wamawink. Motherly, caring, and protective, Wamawink is the glue that holds her herd together. She takes in those who need a herd and does all she can to make them feel loved, though she can be just a bit overbearing at times. But while her smothering can be a huge flaw, Wamawink does genuinely love her herd and will do anything for them, even risking her own life.
Nothing means more to me than my herd.
She especially looks out for Horse whenever she's deeply upset or depressed, acting as a confidant and support, as seen during the Whale Tour episode and throughout Season 2. However, Wamawink isn't perfect. Outside of her sometimes aggressive smothering, she was very jealous and aggressive towards Sunfish's girlfriend, Jeffica. Speaking of her merdude obsession, that can also cause her to do some questionable things, like force Glendale to make zines for her. Still, these flaws aren't enough to overshadow her goodness, nor are they enough to keep her out of the top 3. Just barely edging out Wamawink, the Silver Medal of Good goes to Horse. As a warhorse, Horse was pretty rough around the edges at first. She could be fierce and brave, but also cynical, reckless, and apathetic towards everything and everyone but her goal of returning to her rider. As the series continues, however, we see Horse soften up towards her new herd. She opens up to the others and begins acting friendlier. We see Horse try to comfort Wamawink when she learns about her tragic backstory, and before long, she truly begins to treat the others like her friends instead of just tag-alongs.
Let me lighten your burden.
Being more considerate of their feelings. Though she still has moments of aggression, Horse really does change for the better, and all for the sake of herself and her herd. Her big heroic sacrifice comes at the end of Season 2, when she was willing to trap herself in the Nowhere King's mind forever in order to try and stop him. This shows just how selfless she can be, as well as how far she's come. But while Horse may have had the best arc and is an all-around great main character, there's still one character that tops her in terms of goodness. Finally, our gold medal of good is going to Durpleton. Although not as heroic as Horse, Durpleton wins out due to his pure heart. While he may not understand what's going on and is extremely naive, Durpleton always has good intentions. He's patient, kind, and incredibly friendly and welcoming toward everyone he meets, including Stabby, despite the fact that he's, an enemy. Speaking of Stabby, seeing Durpleton become a dad showed how he was willing to grow and be a better listener for the sake of his adopted son. Considering the parents that Durpleton had, it was also just really sweet to see him break the cycle of abuse. With no major flaws nor really any sort of dark side to him, we felt that we just had to give him the title of Most Good Centaur World Character. And that's our spectrum. But before we go, let's award some Sinner medals. As it turns out, Durpleton is also getting our Darwin medal. The guy may have a huge heart, but he's easily, and unfortunately, the dumbest one of the herd when it comes to intelligence. Though considering his upbringing, that's not his fault. The Gluttony medal, naturally, has to go to Becky Apples. If she's not motivated by violence and taking out minotaurs, she's motivated by apples and will often eat them faster than you can blink. The Lust medal is going to Wamawink for her infamous infatuation with mermen in their eggs. I mean, just look at all the merman zines she forced Glendale to make. Just wow. The Pride medal is going to Zulius. While other characters are pretty prideful, Zulius just takes it to a whole nother level. Definitely the prime example here of a diva. The Greed medal goes to the group's resident kleptomaniac, Glendale. Even if her stealing tendencies may or may not be completely her fault, there's still a part of her that likes it and wants to hoard all that she can. Finally, the Envy medal goes to the Elktor. If it weren't for his desire to be human, the war never would have happened. Unfortunately, it was this envy of the two-legged that sealed his fate. But let us know in the comment section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit the notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the moralities of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.